Welcome back, everyone. Hope you had a great weekend. Looks like beautiful weather. We had some beautiful weather this past weekend, and hopefully, you got a chance to get outside and enjoy it. See a lot of people walking around and doing different things, and still social distancing, which was great. And getting ready here to wrap it up so we can move on into the summer and hopefully get back to real school next year where we can all see each other face to face and get to enjoy some of the experiences that I know we've all missed out on. The big show. It's something I want to put together for this week as a tribute to all of you out there and everything that you did this entire time in terms of learning online, which is not easy. But I really appreciate everything that you did in terms of showing up to watch the screencast, to doing the work, the Google Drawings, the forms, the Google Docs, doing all those things. And hopefully you had learned a little bit about biology, at least some intro stuff to get you started. What I need from you, if possible, is if you could submit a picture of something that represents you and biology by this Wednesday. So it can be anything. I've got a picture over here, my daughter in her swimming pool. And that's what our pool here is at the Petit household there, that nice little bucket there. So if you get a chance and you have anything that represents you in biology, maybe you came across something, you saw something in the woods, or maybe you saw something in town, or who knows what, and you took a picture of something that you thought was interesting, maybe it's an activity that you like to do or something to that effect, because we have been talking about the human body and we have been talking about how we get energy and things like that. So almost any activity you get a chance that you do is related to what you've been learning about in terms of what happens to the food you eat and what happens when you exercise and things like that. So you can take a picture of just about anything and submit it to me. And what I'd like to do, and make sure you also, when you submit your picture, just do a little description about it, what you noticed or what you learned. I'm going to be sharing some things from some of those early experiments that I conducted and other stuff that I've learned through the pandemic and being home and being on our little island here and all the things that I've been doing. I'm going to share some things that I learned, but I also would like for you to share some new things maybe that you've learned as well, besides what we've been doing here in class. So if you get a chance, make sure you submit something to me via email by Wednesday. And that goes out to especially you Marios and Yoshis and Toads. Yeah, Toads, you can contribute too, because you've been here as well. We also have an optional ecology material that we just didn't get a chance to cover some of that because of the shortened trimester. I am going to put it out there for those of you that want to learn a little bit about ecology, or maybe you're thinking about going into AP biology. It'd be good to catch on with some of that stuff in case you don't get it in biology B. So that's something that I'm going to put out there for those of you that want to catch up there. But basically this week is for a lot of people who are going to be catching up on work and things like that. So that ecology unit is optional. And if you've completed just about everything that you got here, you will be getting credit for biology A. And what you need to, some of you may have to make some corrections on the form that you submitted this past Friday, and that's what I'm going to go into next. So let's take a look at what happened so we can get that wrapped up, and then you can get your credit and we can move on. So that's the main thing, is if you did not, you Marios out there, and some of you Marios didn't do that well, and I know there's some Yoshis and Toads as well. If you didn't do that well on Friday's form, you're going to have to kind of watch this presentation so you know what you got to do to get that fixed. So biosynthesis versus digestion is what we want to get into. And so let's take a look at how these two things work to make sure we understand, because there were some kind of crucial errors that we noticed in that last form quiz. The first question that I noticed that a lot of people missed was, how does digestion help with biosynthesis? Remember, digestion is the breakdown in food. So one thing we have to make sure is we have to make sure that we understand what digestion is. Get my pen out here. Pen's good. So digestion in this case is that breakdown of food. So we want to make sure we understand that. And I think most of us understand that we take those large molecules, they're called large organic molecules, and we break those down into small organic molecules, which we then use biosynthesis to build those back up into large organic molecules again. Now, what are your large organic molecules? Those are the ones you see on food labels, and that's what a lot of that stuff that makes up even your own body. So fat, is one of them that we'll talk about, and protein and things like that. Those are your large organic molecules, and remember that your small ones are sort of like your simple sugars and your fatty acids and amino acids and things like that. So those things are much smaller in those cases. So I'll put Fa for fatty acids, and I'll put glucose, for example, as a sugar. Those are your small organic molecules. So remember, biosynthesis is basically this part, building stuff up, and digestion is breaking stuff down. And remember, these all go back and forth sometimes too. Your body might break things down. So this first one is, how does the digestive system work? And we see here only 9 out of 30 of you answered this correctly in terms of large organic molecules are converted into smaller organic molecules. That's a crucial thing. So as, for example, if I have an intestine that is here, and remember your small intestine, all your intestines are lined by that villi, which are the finger-like projections that are going on here. If I have a large molecule that's like maybe a fat, for example, and let's say just this big chunk here represents fat or whatever, remember your body's going to be producing little enzymes and things like that. And as this travels through, remember you got both sides, you're going to have that, the villi. As that travels through, that's going to start to break down into smaller organic molecules. Now, why does it have to do that? It has to do that so it can be absorbed and go into the blood. So we want to make sure that those molecules are small enough. This will not be absorbed. So large organic molecules, the LOMs, cannot be absorbed in the bloodstream. So that one eliminates that one there. Cellular respiration cannot occur. That would occur in a cell. So digestion has nothing to do with that. Digestion is something that breaks stuff down. So again, we're doing that. And here's where we have the large organic molecules are converted into smaller organic molecules, which occurs in that digestive system in a wide variety of places. So we have to make sure we understand that. So also what happens to these molecules in digestion, we can see in this picture here. If we play this, we have our large organic molecule here. All right, some type of, in this case, it looks like this one could be some kind of protein probably, because it's got nitrogen here and it's got your oxygen and hydrogen and so forth. But having that nitrogen makes me think that this is a large protein. So if we're going to digest protein, let's see what happens. It's going to go through quite a bit of a chemical change, and it's going to form those smaller organic molecules. And you can see here, now what we have on this side is not a large molecule of protein, but what we have is an amino acid. And those are smaller particular things. Those are the SOMs, which are listed out here. So amino acids are smaller. What happens to the carbon atoms and the energy in this case when you go through digestion? So we know that protein would have, CH and CC bonds. And so we see those that are here. And so we know that it has chemical energy. So if we watch what happens when this thing breaks down, remember, digestion doesn't really do anything in terms of breaking down those chemical bonds. It rearranges and makes them into smaller chunks, but that chemical energy is still there. So no chemical energy has not been converted. And the carbon atoms have just been moved and shifted into smaller molecules for that case. So again, digestion, that's the main thing, is breaking things down into smaller organic molecules. And hopefully you understand that now a little bit better. The next biggest question that was missed was atoms into energy. What? You tell me that atoms can be turned into energy? Oh, that goes back to ethanol. We just can't do that. So the only thing that converts into energy is bonds. And so we have to take a look at that and see why we're missing this particular question. So let's look at some slides that can help you understand that a little bit better. First off, let's take a look at fat, because the question, if you go back here, the man's fat is converted into energy. So how do we convert this giant molecule into energy? This is a big fat molecule. It's made up of glycerol, which is right here. which is kind of a thing that holds these 3 fatty acids together on the side here. And that's what makes up a fat molecule. So if if your body, and you know that cells have fat in them, that fat sometimes has to be broken down for energy purposes. Think about an animal like a bear, that's hibernating. It's going to have a lot of this stuff, and over time, it's going to break that stuff down for energy. So a bear is going to hibernate, and it's going to have a lot of fat. And when it's hibernating, it's going to use that fat to sort of live off of. So how does it do that? Well, you can think of those fatty acids once they go through digestion. Okay, remember, once they go through digestion, they're really going to be converted into smaller chunks. They can even be converted into sort of similar to what glucose is. So I like to use that as a similarity. So through digestion, we see the fat is going to be broken down. Remember, this is the large organic molecule that you just saw, the fat, and that's going to be broken down into a smaller organic molecule through digestion. Now but that's one way, but remember, we're not talking about digestion here. Oops, back it up. We're talking about, we already have fat, okay? We already have it. Well, basically, our body can kind of like rearrange it and break it down internally, sort of like digestion. And that's what's going to happen, is that molecule is going to be sort of like go through what is called metabolism. So metabolism is sort of like similar to digestion, but is going to be where the molecule is just simply broken down into smaller chunks by your body needs, that it can better manage and use these things. So now you have basically your smaller molecule like glucose, and you can combine it with oxygen. Now remember, that's that cellular respiration that's going on. So fat can be metabolized and then go through cellular respiration. But let's see what happens to the energy, and let's see what happens to the atoms. As we see here, if it goes through the cellular respiration, you get a rearrangement of atoms, but the atoms didn't change. I mean, they're still here. We still have carbon atoms here and oxygen atoms and so forth, but something happened to those bonds. So let's take a little closer look. Let's take a look at the carbon atoms and the chemical energy. We see that in this picture here. You see the chemical energy, you see your carbon atoms. And again, the question is, can this fat, let's go back to that guy, the man's fat is converted into energy. Now, fat, remember, is atoms, and you're saying that atoms are converted into energy. So let's look at that picture again and watch what happens. So the atoms are not converted into energy. The atoms are converted into CO2 and water, H2O. And you can see the carbon atoms went from glucose all basically to carbon dioxide. Now, what happened to the bonds, that chemical energy? That chemical energy, boom, moved into these here, heat and motion energy. And so energy, remember, is energy and can only be converted back and forth, and it doesn't disappear, nor do atoms, but they're two different things. So when we look at that question is true. So some of the atoms meant for converted into energy, that is false, okay? So this cannot occur here, and that would have been the correct answer for that one. So those of you who got that one, you're good. All right, next question. Atoms into heat. Some of the atoms in the man's fat are converted into heat. Again, atoms are atoms. This is matter. So matter is matter. Matter cannot be converted. So matter cannot be converted into heat. It just can't happen. So matter can only change its form. Energy can only change its form. So again, this is not true, and let's prove why. So what happens to chemical energy during cellular respiration? We have our chemical energy here. Okay, and remember the question is, the man's atoms are converted into heat. We see that that's not the case. What is converted into heat is, if we look at these bonds, which are chemical bonds, boom, where do they end up? There's that chemical energy from those bonds, and voila, they convert down into here, into heat and motion. So you see that change from chemical energy up here to heat and motion, and that is not anything to deal with atoms. So make sure you understand that one. The final question that a lot of people missed, about half and half, but still more people missed and then got it right, is some of the atoms in the man's fat are incorporated into water vapor. And a lot of people said no. So remember that fat is comprised of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Now, if you're burning fat or going through cellular respiration, you're always going to combine things with oxygen. So where does the water vapor? Remember, under cellular respiration, we get H2O and CO2. So remember, C6H12O6 is glucose, but which could be similar to fat, and this is what we get. So where are these atoms in water vapor coming from? Well, let's take a look. So what happens to oxygen and hydrogen during cellular respiration? Again, remember, this is the fat from metabolism. This is the big fat guy that's over here, and he wants to lose some weight. Remember that fat is being metabolized. And so we know that metabolism takes place and it turns into the smaller molecule. Now, what happens to those atoms? And as we see here, those atoms, hydrogen, they get all shuffled around, and the oxygen, this blue is oxygen. We see a lot of those atoms are shifted into this water or the CO2. Those are the only two places that they can go. So in that question there, when we look at that, again, the man's fat is incorporated into water vapor. Those atoms, they can turn into water vapor plus CO2. And so this is the correct answer. All right, good work on that. So hopefully through this presentation, you have a better understanding of how digestion is. Again, the molecules are small, or metabolism, if it's coming from inside of you, and that would be molecules that have gone from, if you go through that metabolism, you have a LOM and you're going to an SOM, a small organic molecule. Those are key things there. Now, remember, we also have that biosynthesis, which is the opposite direction. If this guy takes in food, he's going to basically be making this fat from the digested molecules that are SOM, and he's got an LOM here. So a lot going on, but it's pretty, basic to understand if you just think about what molecule is being moved in what part. So just, keep in mind, if you have questions, feel free to ask, but these are pretty common things that you'll see even in AP biology in terms of understanding how, matter and energy is working. So hopefully you got a better understanding of that. And we got that. And that concludes today's presentation. So Mario's, Yoshi's, Toads, who, if you didn't pass that quiz on Friday, go ahead and do the retake and get your credit there, and then you'll be all set. And then, hey, send me a picture. Love to see what you're doing. That way we can get on to the summer and hopefully you will have a great week this week, and we'll have our big finish near the end of the week when I'll get all those pictures. All right, everyone, take care. Stay safe.